Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, maybe even early evening. My name is Nanette Kennedy, and I'm here with the Conversations with God book discussion group, and I represent Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And those of you who are members of Evolution Revolution, it's Awakening Day. Happy Awakening Day. And anyway, we can go ahead and get started with the reading if you want to take it from here, Linda.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we start, I just wanted to honor the woman by the name of Heather Heyer, who was murdered on a year ago today in Charlottesville, Virginia, by a Nazi during the white supremacist rally. Heather Heyer was one of the protesters. Purple was her favorite color, and I have vowed personally to wear purple nail polish. I'll show you. I've been wearing purple nail polish since she was murdered, and will continue to wear it until I feel as if whatever's happening in our country has been healed. And I thought that this chapter was a great. It's interesting that this chapter is happening today. Because you'll see as soon as I read the first paragraph, you'll make the connection yourself. So let's get started. This is A Friendship with God, an Uncommon Dialogue, chapter 16. We're on page 320. This is Neil speaking. What does it mean to be totally accepting, blessing, and grateful? I'm going to turn my... that way we have the cleanest signal. What does it mean to be totally accepting, blessing, and grateful? These are the last three of the 5 attitudes of God, are not as clear to me, especially 3 and 4. Or to be totally accepting means not to quarrel with what is showing up right now. It means not to reject it or throw it back or walk away from it, but to embrace it, hold it, love it as if it were your own. Because it is your own. It is your own creation with which you are well pleased, unless you are not. And if you are not, you will resist owning what you have created, and what you resist persists. Therefore, rejoice and be glad, and should the present circumstance or condition be one which you now choose to change, simply choose to experience it in another way. The outward appearance, the outward manifestation may not be altered at all, but your inner experience of it can and will be changed forever, simply out of your decision about it. Remember, this is what you're after. You're not concerned with outer appearances, only with your inner experience. Let the outer world be what it is. Create your inner world as you would have it be. This is what is meant by being in your world and not of it. This is mastery in living. Okay, let me get this straight. You should accept anything, even those things you disagree with. Accepting something does not mean refusing to change it. In fact, the opposite is true. You cannot change that which you do not accept, in you especially, and outside of yourself as well. Accept everything, therefore, as the divine manifestation of the divinity within you. Then you declare yourself to be its creator, and only then can you uncreate it. Only then can you recognize that it is. Know again the power within you to create something new. To accept something is not to agree with it. It is simply to embrace it, whether you agree with it or not. You would have us embrace the devil himself, wouldn't you? Well, how else would you heal him? We've had this exchange before. Yes, and we'll have it again. Over and over will I share with you these truths. Over and over will you hear them, until you hear them. If you catch me repeating myself, it is because you are repeating yourself. You are repeating every behavior, every action, every thought which has brought you over and over again to sadness, to misery, to defeat. Yet the victory can be won, the victory over this devil of yours. Of course, there is no devil, as we have also discussed many times before. We are speaking metaphorically here. How can you heal that which you will not even hold? You must first hold something firmly in your grasp, firmly in your reality, before you can let it go. I'm not sure I understand that. Help me understand that. You cannot drop something that you do not hold. Therefore, behold, I bring you glad tidings of joy. God is totally accepting. Humans are very accepting. Humans love each other, except when those others do this or that. They love their world, except when it does not please them. They love me, except when they don't. God is not accepting. God is accepting of everyone, of everything. There are no exceptions. There are no exceptions. Like being totally accepted sounds a lot like being totally loving. It is all the same thing. We are using different words to describe the same experience. Love and acceptance are interchangeable concepts. In order to change something, you must first accept that it is there. In order to love something, you must do the same thing. You cannot love the part of yourself that you claim is not there, that you disown. You have disowned so many parts of yourself that you do not wish to claim. In disclaiming those parts of yourself, you have made it impossible to totally love yourself, and thus to totally love one another. Deborah Ford wrote a wonderful book on this subject called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. It was about people who were seeking the light but didn't know how to deal with their own darkness, don't see the gift there. I recommend this book to everybody. It can change lives. It explains in very clear and understandable terms why acceptance is such a blessing. It is a blessing. Without it, you would be damning yourself and others. Yet through love and acceptance, you bless all those whose lives you touch. When you become totally loving and totally accepting, you become totally blessing. And this renders you and everyone else totally joyful. Everything flows together. Everything connects to everything else. And you are beginning to see and to understand that all of the 5 attitudes of God are really the same. They are what God is. The aspect of God that is totally blessing is that aspect which condemns nothing. In God's world, there is no such thing as condemnation, only commendation. You are all to be commended for the work you are doing, for the job you are doing, getting to know and experience who you really are. But whenever anything bad would happen around my mother, she would always say, God bless it. Everyone else would say, God damn it. But my mother would say, God bless it. And one day I asked her why, and she looked at me as if she couldn't quite comprehend how I could ask the question. And then, with the love and patience of one explaining something to a small child, she answered, I don't want God to damn it. I want God to bless it. That's the only thing that will make it any better. Your mother was a very aware person. She understood many things. Go now and bless all the things in your life. Remember, I have sent you nothing but angels, and I have brought you nothing but miracles. How does one go about blessing things? I don't understand what that's about, what those words mean. You give something your blessing when you give it your highest, best energies, your highest thoughts. I should give my best energies, my highest thoughts to the things I hate, like war, violence, greed, people who are unkind, policies that are inhumane. I don't understand. I can't give these things my blessing. But it is precisely your best energies and your highest thoughts which those things need if they are to be changed. Do you not understand? You can change nothing by condemning it. Indeed, you literally condemn it to be repeated. I am not to condemn wanton killing, rampant prejudice, widespread violence, unchecked greed. You are to condemn nothing. 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 Have I not sent my teachers to tell you, judge not and neither condemn? Yet if we condemn nothing, we seem to be approving of everything. Failure to condemn does not mean failure to seek change. Because you have not condemned something does not mean that you approve of it. It simply means that you refuse to judge it. You may still, on the other hand, choose something else. A choice to change does not always have to come out of anger. In fact, your chances of effecting very real change rise in direct proportion to the decrease in your anger. Humans often use anger as their justification to seek change, and judgments as their justification for anger. You've created a lot of drama around this, perceiving injury in order to justify your judgments. Many of you end your relationships this way. You have not learned the art of simply saying, I am complete. The present form of this relationship no longer serves me. You insist first on perceiving injury, and then moving into judgment, and then coming from anger in order to somehow justify the change you seek to make. It is as if, without anger, you cannot have what you want. You cannot change what you don't like. So you build up all sorts of drama around it. Now I tell you this. Bless, bless, bless your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you. Send them your best energies and your highest thoughts. You will not be able to do this unless you see every person and every life circumstance as a gift, as an angel, as a miracle. When you do, you will move into the fullness of gratitude. You will be totally grateful. The fifth attitude of God, and the circle will be complete. This is an important element, this feeling of gratitude, isn't it? Yes. Gratitude is the attitude that changes everything. To be grateful for something is to stop resisting it, to see it and actually acknowledge it as a gift, even when the gift is not immediately apparent. In addition, as you have already been taught, gratitude for an experience, condition, or outcome in advance is a powerful tool in the creation of your reality and a sure sign of mastery. It is so powerful that I think the fifth attitude should almost have been listed first. In fact, the magnificence of the 5 attitudes of God is that, like the 7 steps of friendship with God, their order may be reversed. God is totally grateful, blessing, accepting, loving, and joyful. This is another good place for me to mention my favorite prayer, the most powerful prayer I've ever heard. Thank you, God, for helping me understand that this problem has already been solved for me. Yes, that is a powerful prayer. The next time you are confronted with a condition or a circumstance you judge to be problematical, express your immediate gratitude, not only for the solution, but for the problem itself. By doing so, you instantly change your perspective on it and your attitude about it. Next, bless it, just as your mother did. Give it your best energies and your highest thought. In this, you make it your friend and not your enemy, that which supports you rather than that which opposes you. And then accept it and resist not evil, for what you resist persists. Only what you accept can you change. Now envelop it with love. Whatever you are experiencing, you can literally love any undesired experience away. In a sense, you can love it to death. Finally, be joyful, for the exact and perfect outcome is at hand. Nothing will take your joy away from you. For joy is who you are and who you will always be. So in the face of every problem, do a joyful thing. Like Anna sang in the musical story The King and I whistle a happy tune, and every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. There you have it. You have it perfectly. I have a friend who uses these attitudes every day, in every moment. He heals other people by helping them to see how easily and quickly they can change their attitudes and showing them what a difference such a change will make in their lives. His name is Jerry Jemblosky. Gerald G. Jemblosky, MD, to be formal. And he wrote a groundbreaking book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. Jerry founded the Center of Attitudinal Healing in Sausalito, California, and there are now over 130 such centers in cities throughout the world. I have never known a kinder, more gentler man. He holds a positive attitude about everything. Everything. In his home, I have never heard a discouraging word. In this, he is remarkable, and his attitude about life is inspiring. Nancy and I were spending several days with Jerry and his wonderful, accomplished wife, Diane Cirincione, when, as life would have it, I found myself experiencing a personality clash with one of his other house guests. I'm sorry to say that I was not on top of it during this time. Tired and drained from many months on the road, I was not dealing with the situation very peacefully. Jerry saw I was agitated, and he asked me if there was anything he could do to help. As anyone who knows him will tell you, this is a common question from Jerry whenever he sees anyone around him experiencing any kind of discomfort. I told him I was having some negative feelings about an earlier interaction with the other house guest, and Jerry immediately suggested that it might be beneficial to sit down with himself, Diane, and the other person to take a look at it and see what it would take to heal it. Then he asked me a probing question. Do you want to heal it, or do you want to hang on to the negative feelings? I told him I didn't think I was making a conscious decision to hold on to the negativity, but that I was having some trouble getting past it. Well, everything is going to depend on your attitude about it, Jerry replied in a very kind, quiet voice. There's probably something very positive going on to come from all of this. Let's look to see what it is. We had the talk he suggested, and with his facilitation and Diane's, the other house guest and I took the first steps on the road back to love. I was really grateful to have Jerry around during a time when I just plain lost touch with my center and who I really am. Without taking sides, without making judgments, without any drastic interventions other than a continuing suggestion to look at things in a different way and give myself permission to see another's point of view. Diane and Jerry not only played a huge role in healing the moment, but gave me tools with which to apply attitudinal healing principles to everyday life. Not all of us can be lucky enough to be around Jerry Jamblosky when we're having a rough moment, but we can be around Jerry's wisdom. That's why I'm excited about his new book, Forgiveness, the Greatest Healer of All. What makes Jerry Jamblosky stand out is his remarkable attitude. It heals everything in sight. It even healed Jerry's sight. It happened during the time we spent together. Jerry was experiencing some medical complications involving his eyesight, which was deteriorating. In fact, on one of the days we were there, he was scheduled to have some outpatient surgery, and there was a real possibility that the procedure could cause his eyesight to be diminished rather than improved. In fact, there was a chance he might lose his sight in one eye altogether. None of this seemed to bother Jerry. He wasn't giving it a second thought. He simply wasn't going to dwell on it. He avoided any discussion of it during the days before the surgery. And I remember that he left for the hospital with the biggest smile. Everything is going to be just fine, he announced, no matter how it turns out. I learned something that day from a master. To accept something is not to agree with it. It is simply to embrace it, whether you agree with it or not. Yes, I could see that Jerry was accepting and blessing the experience he was having. You give something your blessing when you give it your highest energies and your best energies and your highest thoughts. That's why I think immediately of Jerry when I hear about the 5 attitudes of God. He's a person who practices those attitudes consistently. People are always asking me how my life has changed since my books came out. Meeting and becoming friends with people like Jerry Jamblosky is one change that has blessed me deeply. Connecting and developing personal relationships with many people who I have personally admired through the years has been one of the most instructive and humbling outcomes of having produced the Conversations with God trilogy. I have seen in these extraordinary people what I have yet to master, and they have inspired me. There have been other changes, of course, and the most important of these is my relationship with God. I now have a personal relationship with God, and that has resulted in an experience of continued well-being, of quiet empowerment, of personal growth and expansion, of deeply enriching inspiration, of sure and certain love. And as a result of this, every other important aspect of my life has changed as well. Hang on, I need to cough. Everything about the way I hold the experience of relationship is different. And my personal relationships are reflecting that. My personal interactions with others have become joyful and satisfying. As for life partnership, I'm writing this in the 5th year of my marriage to Nancy, and ours has been almost a fairy tale romance. It was wonderful at the beginning, and it has become even more wonderful with each passing day. That does not mean it is guaranteed to last forever in its present form. I'm not going to predict that because I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on either Nancy or myself. But I believe that even in the form of our relationship even if the form of our relationship should ever change, it will always remain wonderfully honest, caring, compassionate, and loving. Not only have my relationships improved and thus my emotional health, but so has my physical health. I am now in better condition than I was 10 years ago and feeling enlivened and energized. Again, I'm not going to predict that it will always stay this way because I am not going to put that pressure on myself. But I can tell you that even if my health does change, my inner peacefulness and my deep joy will not. For I have seen the perfection of my life, and I no longer question outcomes nor struggle against them. My understanding of abundance has also shifted, and I now experience a world without lack or limitation. While I know that this is not the experience of the majority of my fellow humans, I work consciously every day to help others change their experience, and I share of my abundance freely, supporting causes and projects and people with whom I am in agreement as other means of expressing and experiencing and recreating who I am. And yes, I have been inspired by the many wonderful teachers and visionaries I have come to know on a personal level. I've learned from them what makes human beings stand out, what lifts them from the crowd, above the crowd. This is not about star worship or name dropping, because I am clear that what lifts these remarkable individuals can lift us as well. The same magic resides in all of us, and the more we learn about people who have made life's magic work, the more we can make it work in our own lives. In this way, we are all each other's teachers. We are guides calling each other, not really to learn, but to remember, to know again who we really are. Marianne Williamson is a great guide, great such guide. Let me tell you what I've learned from Marianne. Courage. She has taught me grandly of bravery and of commitment to a higher walk. I have never known a person with more personal strength or spiritual stamina or of greater vision. But Marianne does not merely talk of her vision for the world. She walks that vision every day, working tirelessly to put it into place. That is what I've learned from her, to work tirelessly to put into place the vision you have been given, and to do so courageously. Act now. I was in bed with Marianne Williamson once. She's going to kill me for telling you this, but it's true. And I learned many wonderful things in those moments we shared. Okay, maybe not in bed, but on bed. And my wife, Nancy, was in and out of the room, chatting away with us as she went about packing. The fact is, we were hanging out at Marianne's home, enjoying some precious and rare personal time together. And early on the morning of my departure, Marianne and I wound up sitting on her bed together, sharing orange juice and sneaking a pastry, talking about life. I asked her how she managed to keep going, how she had continued her breakneck pace for so many years, touching so many lives in such an extraordinary way. She looked at me softly, but with a strength behind her eyes that I remember to this day. It's about commitment, she said. It's about living the highest choices you can make, the choices many people only talk about. Then she challenged me. Are you ready to do that? She asked. If you are, wonderful. If you're not, get out of the public eye and stay out. Because if you give hope to people, you become a model. And you've got to be willing to provide a certain amount of leadership. You've got to be willing to live up to the model, or at least to try with all your being. People can forgive you if you fail, but they will find it hard to forgive you if you fail to try. Sharing your own evolutionary process with others puts you on the fast track. If you tell somebody else that it is possible for them, you have to be willing to demonstrate that it is possible for you. You have to commit your life to this. Surely this must be what is meant by living life deliberately. Yet when we set our intentions deliberately, sometimes seems things to happen coincidentally. But I have learned that there is no such thing as coincidence, and that such synchronicitous events are simply God's way of putting things into place for us once we have our intentions clear. It turns out that the more deliberately you live, the more coincidences you notice in your life. Once Conversations with God, Book 1 was published, for instance, it became my intention to see it placed into the hands of as many people as possible, because I believed it contained important information for all humankind. 2 weeks after its release, Bernie Siegel was in Annapolis lecturing about the connection between medicine and spirituality. In the middle of his presentation, he said, "All of us are talking to God all the time. And I don't know about you, but I'm writing my dialogue down. In fact, my next book is called Conversations with God, and it's about a man who asks every question he's ever had, and God gives him answers. He doesn't understand all of them, and he even argues a little with God. And so they have this conversation. It's really my own experience." Everyone in the audience chuckled except one woman, my daughter. Samantha just happened to be in the audience that day, and at the break, rushed down the podium. "Dr. Siegel," she began breathlessly, "were you serious about writing a book, the book you talked about?" "Sure was," Bernie said. "I'm halfway through it." "Well, that's very interesting," Samantha managed, "because my father has just had a book published that's exactly the one you described, right down to the title." Bernie's eyes widened. "Really? That's fascinating. Although I'm not surprised. Once an idea is out there, anyone can grasp it. I think all of us should write our own personal Bible anyway. I'd love to talk to him about this." The next day, I spoke with Dr. Siegel at his home in Connecticut. We shared our experiences, and it turned out that he was indeed writing the same book I'd just published. At that point, I didn't see the perfection of what was happening, but I fell into fear. I began to imagine the worst-case scenario. 2 months after Bernie's book comes out, people find mine on some bookshelf somewhere and accuse me of copying his. I was too embarrassed to share any of those thoughts during our conversation. After all, my own book warned against fear-based thinking, saying repeatedly to throw out negative ideas, replace them with positive ones. Bernie kindly said that he'd love to read my book, and I promised to send him a copy. I hung up and I tried to apply some positive thinking. For several weeks, I alternated between worrying and wondering. Wondering is the opposite of worrying. It's something wonderful is worrying. Hang on, I have to cough. Wondering is the opposite of worrying. It is to something wonderful as worrying is to something worrisome. These days, I wonder a lot. That is, produce with my mental energy a lot of wonder. In those early days, I was still caught up in worrying at least half of the time. Half-time wondering must have been enough, because do you know what Bernie Siegel did? Not only did he retitle and rework his own book, he turned around and endorsed mine. He was the first celebrity endorsement which Conversations with God received, and it helped book buyers who might have been skittish about a previously unpublished author see the value of what I had produced. Now, folks, that's class. That's the action of a big person who knows he has nothing to lose by lifting up a fellow human being, even when that fellow human being is walking all over the same territory covering the same ground. Here is a man capable of saying not only, hey, there's room enough for all of us, but even, I'll give this person some of my space. I've since come to know Bernie on a personal level. We've even made presentations together. He is a sheer delight, with a sparkle in his eyes that lights up every room. That is the sparkle of selflessness, and what I have come to call in my personal shorthand, the Bernie factor. Your eyes will sparkle too when you go through life as Bernie does, lifting up everyone whose life you touch. Surely this must be what is meant by living life beneficially. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross used to say, all true benefits are mutual. And that was a great teaching, for when we benefit others, we benefit ourselves. I know a man who understands this perfectly. Gary Zukav lives an hour from me. We've spent time together. Gary and his spiritual partner, Linda Francis, and Nancy and me at my home in Southern Oregon. He told me over dinner once about how 10 years before he'd written Seed of the Soul. Of course, I was familiar with the book and had read it shortly after he came out. He also wrote The Dancing Wu-Li Masters. Both were big sellers, and Gary was suddenly a celebrity, except that he was not. In his heart, he felt what he wanted to be treated like was just everyone else. But authoring bestsellers does not always allow that. So Gary had made a conscious effort to move himself out of the spotlight. He disappeared for a few years, declining lecture invitations and interview requests, retreating instead to a quiet place to mull over what he had done. Had his books made a real contribution? Were they worthy of all the attention? Had he added something of value? What was his place in all of this? As Gary was sharing his process, I realized that I had not taken time to ask myself those same questions. I had just plunged ahead. I knew I'd have to learn from those who have granted themselves a longer look at deeper issues, and I set my intention to do so, though I didn't know how or when I would be given the opportunity. Jump ahead 10 months. I'm hopping on a plane to Chicago. As I turn the corner into the cab, there's Gary Zukav. We just happened to be catching the same flight and be seated in the same section. Though we were going to the city for entirely different reasons, we discovered while chatting across the aisle that we were booked into the same hotel. Okay, I said to myself, what's going on here? Is this another one of those coincidences? When we got to the hotel, I thought it might be nice to have dinner together. I was in the process of producing a book, the book you're now reading, and it was not going well. Everything had come to a complete halt. As we scanned our menus, I was sharing this with Gary. I told him I was worried because I was including stories from my life in the book, and I didn't know if my readers would be interested. What they are interested in is truth, Gary said simply. If you tell anecdotes just to tell anecdotes, they have limited value. But if you describe experiences in your life in order to share what you learned from them, they become invaluable. Of course, he added quietly, you have to be willing to show yourself completely in order to do that. You can't hide behind this persona. You have to be willing to be authentic, transparent, and to say things the way they are. If you're not responding to a life situation from a place of mastery, say so. If you're falling short of your own teachings, admit it. People could learn from that. So, Gary said, tell your anecdotes, but always include where you are and what you've learned. Then we can stay with your story because it becomes our story. Don't you see, we're all walking the same path. He smiled warmly. Nanette, do you think we should pause? We've only got 15 minutes left.
Yes, I do. I was just about to say that when he said jump 10 years ahead, but I think this is as good a place as any.
Okay.
Does anybody want to start off the conversation? I don't know if most of you noticed this, but we just had Bernie Siegel on the Humanities Team program where he was talking about spirituality and depression and suicide. It was right after who was the chef that committed suicide? I can't think of his name.
Anthony.
Yes. And so it was about a week or so after that that Bernie Siegel was on one of our programs, and because I don't remember reading this before, the part about Bernie Siegel, but I just think it was a really cool thing that Bernie Siegel said about he could share his space or something like that. I can't find it at the moment. But that he would retitle his book. Anyway, I just thought that was a pretty cool thing for him to do. And also, when Neil was talking about Marianne Williamson and how hard she's worked to be a model, I imagine that can be difficult when you're in the limelight, such as the people he's talking about. And all of us have probably run into somebody who's in the limelight that wasn't quite as nice as you might think they might be. This is a lot to comprehend because we did read longer, so I'm unovering myself. It's just a lot. There's a lot to take in this chapter, and it's a really long chapter. Now I'll do over.
I just think you could spend weeks and weeks and weeks on the concept of loving it no matter what it is that's shown up. Using the example of the murder of Heather Heyer.
Yep.
Just one example, and there's a trillion examples we could use.
What I find very, very enlightening about this whole chapter is that here in Canada, I've attended meetings where it's considered a requirement to badmouth absolutely everyone. And the one meeting that's coming to mind is a grief group in British Columbia that I attended about 2 months ago, in which the local expert went on and on about how rotten Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was. And this woman was no doctor. She was, in terms of stature, way, way down there. She hadn't written any books or articles or anything, but she knew all about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's mistakes. And she was talking about a book which was published at least 50 years earlier. And I hadn't read this book yet to this point. Otherwise, I would have had something to say. And so I just believed whatever she had to say. And then I had to revise everything once I heard Neil's take on it and what we're learning in this book. So what I want to tell everyone is that as a Canadian, and we pride ourselves on being so large-hearted and open, all I hear is rotten, horrible judgments, and I'm not going to put up with them ever again. So this book has given me a 180-degree turn, and I'm going to go at it henceforth. Is just not oppose them, but just say that, well, I value your opinion, and that's really interesting. However, blah, blah, blah. I mean, one of the things that Neil is saying is cease all againstness. So the idea would be to just give a different perspective. But I'm not that proud to be Canadian anymore.
You make me laugh, Shabana.
I'm glad.
I think it's interesting, the topic of judgment. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with the guy by the name of Tom Bond, Thom, Bond, B-O-N-D. He's doing a compassion course. It's called the 2018 Compassion Course online. And in week 8, the study is about judgment. And he approaches, and all of this is, about compassion and finding compassion. But he talks about creating a judgment journal. And in his example, so for example, he's giving an example where he's at a retreat or something, and there's somebody is kind of like Neil being annoyed by this person in that story. It's kind of the same thing. This guy's being annoyed by this other person attending this event, and he's having these judgmental thoughts, like he cares more about having a guru status than contributing to people, or he's being irresponsible, or he's an egomaniac. And what this guy Tom Bond suggests is that each of those judgments is actually saying something about something that we're needing or wanting or feeling or we value. So in the statement of he's being an egomaniac, the things that Tom would suggest that he was feeling was that he values awareness and presence. He values mutuality and community and partnership. And, or for example, he's irresponsible. So in that case, the things that are being valued are care and competence, contribution, learning, and growth. And I just think it's brilliant because it totally shifts the way that we can look at our own judgments and realize that, okay, what is it saying about me? Forget about what I'm saying about that other person. She's so whatever, or he's so whatever. Forget about that. What is it saying about me when I say those things? What am I lacking? What am I fearing? What am I wanting? And journaling that out allows us to just let it go. Yeah, he might look like an egomaniac to me, but that's because I value these things. And so it gives you a place then to go have a conversation with the person that you think is being an egomaniac. Because instead of approaching them and saying, well, you really look like an egomaniac to me, or you're being really egotistical, you can come at it from I really value these things. And I'm not seeing that from you. Can you help me understand. You can find some common ground. Anyway, it's a lot deeper than we can go into now, but I just wanted to share that because to me, it's really exciting.
I thank you for that. And I was just going to say, because we only are going to be able to chat for a couple more minutes before I bring Shabana in to do the meditation, maybe we should pick up on some of these things again next week before we start reading. Because I find it very interesting about the judgment journal. And I do think we could spend some more time talking about that.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Anne.
At that time.
Yep.
Well, it was reading about the acceptance. I mean, for a long time now, all spiritual programs have said, you know, bless everything. If you have $1 left in your bank account, bless it instead of looking at how am I going to pay the bills or something like that, and it will multiply, law of attraction. Something happened with a friend of mine where their roommate stole their medication. And it's like, so this has to do with acceptance, where there's a line though. It's like, you can't accept everything, but when, you know, you have to do something about it in certain situations. And I don't really have a lot to say about that, except I find that some things are very hard to accept. I can bless them. I can look at, you know, what value they may have or something, but some things are not acceptable. And there's only 3 things you can do with everything, which is you can accept it, you can change it, or you can walk away from it. So I don't know, but this thing about acceptance is the most important thing. It's the answer to all your problems. And yet, I think you got the gist of what I'm saying. Sometimes it isn't very easy.
Mm-hmm. And I think
I guess something. Yeah, go ahead.
That's okay. I just was thinking we can pick up more on that next week too, if people are interested, because I want to give Shabana the last 2 minutes to do the meditation.
Yes.
Shabana.
Meditation.
Oh, Shabana. Oh,
I'm here.
Okay. No worries. Thank you.
It's just that I'm here. What we need to do right here, right now, God, is thank you that our hearts have been opened to love and to love ourselves, to do what Linda said, is compassionately include the judger, because we're all the same. Amen.
Well, that was a little shorter than we usually take for the closing meditation. And I thank you, Shabana. And I thank everybody. And I'm glad to see those of you that made it today. It's awesome. And we'll continue again next week. And we can just talk about it at the beginning of the call if we want to back up or if we want to continue reading. Okay?
I just got one more. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No. No.
Oh, all right. I just wanted to say that, of course, we don't believe in duality, Nanette, but you're suffering for the sake of that
Kitten?
kitten. Yeah, to save the kitten.
Yep. The
It's
kitten.
mutual benefit.
Yep. In fact, one of the kittens is trying to get in under my door. I can just see the paws. So it's like, I keep looking over thinking somebody's coming into my office. Yep. But I'll tell you what, I don't walk up and down the hallway or up and down the stairs or hallway without flipping that light on now. You know, because that's really what happened. But anyway, thank you for your kind words, and I'm on the mend, and I love you all. We'll see each other next week.
And heal
Thank you.
quickly.
And I just want to say to Linda that, my goodness, she got me on the right track with my Canadian friends. Because it would have taken me much longer. I was doing a zigzag and now I've got the straight. So thank you, Linda.
I love you,
You're
Shabana.
quite a team.
Linda,
Have a
P.
good week, everybody.
Okay. All right. Everybody have a good week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you all.
Love you all.